Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining this session on how to craft a winning social media strategy with Adobe Express. Really excited to share this with you. We're going to be diving into 3 core workflows that will allow you to create standout social media content that's on brand and at scale. So let's get a quick intro done and let's dive straight in. So firstly, I'm Andy, a Principal Product Manager working on Adobe Express. So any questions you have related to Express, I'm your guy. Also, for background, about 9 years ago, I co-founded a social media marketing technology business called ContentCal, became one of the fastest growing large spaces, and we were fortunate enough to get acquired by Adobe about 4 years ago. So a lot of my background is all around marketing and social media. So excited to dig into this with you today. But the real star of the show today is my friend Liz. Do you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. I'm very excited to be doing this with you, Andy. My name is Liz Mosley. I'm a branding designer based in the UK, and I'm also a podcast host. And I help small businesses with all sorts of aspects of their branding and marketing through the podcast and also through done for you services as well. Now, Andy and I bring very different skill sets to this session. And I think it would be fair to say, Andy, that you like data, you like numbers, and that you bring the sort of more nerdy aspect to this talk today. What do you think?
I thought you might be going there. Yeah, I think that's fair. And in contrast, Liz brings incredible design expertise, which, yeah, absolutely I need. But also, if we let Liz, she'll probably spend the remainder of this session trying to choose the perfect font. So I think do you reckon that's fair?
I would say that's fair also, but I promise I will be on my best behavior and I will not do that because I know that we're short on time today. So let's dive in to our packed session. Now, we want to share with you some of the fundamentals before we get started in creating any of the designs today. And I really believe that before you start creating content, coming up with even your content strategy, you need to think about what your brand foundations are and what your brand strategy is. And so I've come up with a really simple framework to help you called the block framework. And these are just some of your core building blocks that you need to consider before you get started. So first up, we have brand values. What is it that you stand for? Write these down, make them really clear, and make sure that they really impact sort of every aspect of your business going forward. Next up, we have the look and feel. So your visual identity. And I always think it's really important to think, how do you want your clients or your customers to feel when they interact with your brand? Make sure that the visuals reflect that and evoke that feeling. Then we have your offers. What is it that you're actually going to sell? Get really clear on what those are so that you can communicate them as effectively as possible. Then we have your customer and your community. Get to know them, learn as much as you can about them, go deeper than just those sort of surface level kind of avatars of a client or a customer. Where are they hanging out? What do they care about? What are their values? Make sure that you know all of that information so that you can serve them as effectively as possible. And then finally, we have keep consistent. So much of building trust for a brand is around showing up consistently, using your visuals consistently, and content plays such a huge part of that, which is why we're really excited to cover that today. So that is your branding framework, your foundational blocks. And now I'm going to pass it to you, Andy, to share some of your framework for social media.
Love it. Thanks, Liz. I think the 2 points you mentioned there, they're real standouts for me. Like, that is absolutely the foundation of what you need to create anything on top of. We can't create standout content without doing the work that you just went through. And, that most important thing you just mentioned there is the word trust, right? Trust is the underlying emotion that governs all buyer behavior. So without that, we're not going to succeed, as we all know. But on top of the foundations that you've just shared, Liz, I'd like to paint the picture as to how you can build the perfect content strategy. Now, I don't think actually there's a perfect content strategy that exists. It's so context dependent, but this is the model that I've used over the years. I've seen others use successfully. So I want to share that with you, but just make no mistake, there is no single one way to do social media content. But let's break it down in a real simple way. So there are 3 main components to it. There are your content pillars, which are the building blocks that you'll build your content strategy on. They're your themes, which represent the types of content that you'll create. And then your topics, which is the actual posts that you'll create as a result. I'm going to dive into that in a little more detail, but there's really 3 parts to it. So let's talk about pillars. I recommend only 4. Conveniently, they spell the word best: bond, educate, showcase, tell. And they're in that order for a reason, because without doing the first parts, the second parts won't work. So we start with bond content. The way that we need to connect on social is at an emotional level. So that's what your bond content is for. It's not to drive a commercial outcome. It's purely there to unveil the humanity behind your business. That might mean as a brand, speaking in a human tone, talking about your mission, visions, and values, surfacing your employees or leadership team, making people the star of the show. People connect with people, and that's what we need to lean into as far as business social media is concerned. Now, with that foundation built of our bond orientated content, which might be like getting to know us, our missions, why I started, that kind of thing, we can then overlay onto that educational content. This is the pillar I enjoy the most, because when we educate, we add value. When we add value, we grow trust. And that is the cornerstone of all buying decisions, as we already said. So the type of educational content that you could be making is things where you've got like best practice guides, tips and tricks, what I wish I knew, that kind of thing. Things that display your deep understanding and empathy with your audience. You already would have done this in Liz's blocks framework, where you've understood your customer, understood them at a deep emotional and empathetic level. Then we can understand their gaps and then build content that truly helps close those gaps and builds trust. Once we've done those first two most important parts, we've created an emotional connection, then we've built trust through educational content, then we can move on to showcase. Showcase content is things like day in the life, showing behind the scenes of like your work in progress. It's your opportunity to show your credibility and the things that you create. And then finally, the bit that everyone will understand is your tell content. Of course, we need to drive some form of outcome, whether it's commercial, whether it's non-profit, but we need to drive some form of impact from our content. So of course, that is like, special offers, sales, event promotions, whatever it might be. But none of that will work unless we've done the 3 pillars underneath that. So they're your pillars that you'll build your content strategy on. And we'll also share deeper learnings into both the blocks framework and the best content strategy, of which you can download from some links here.
So in our session today, we are going to be using a fictional brand called Paper Finch Press. And I have already set up this brand in Adobe Express because that is going to be one of the aspects that save me the most time when it comes to creating content. It's that work that I've done ahead of time, which to be fair, hasn't taken me very long, but is really, really foundational. So the first thing I want to do is show you our brand kit. Now, Paper Finch Press is a fictional publishing company, and we publish books for creatives. And so we have built our whole session today around this brand. And if I head over to the brand tabs on the left, you'll see here I have my Paper Finch Press brand. And if I click on it, you can see we've got logos, colors, our different fonts that we're going to use. We've also got some illustrations and some other assets that we can use as well. And the thing that's amazing about this, and it links back to everything we've talked about already, this makes it really easy for us to create everything looking the same and being really consistent. Consistency is so key when we're building up that trust, and especially with the visuals as well. So we've got our brand kit set up, and that's really easy to do and update. And then if we head over to your stuff, I've also created a project. Now, the reason for that is I want to be able to share everything that I'm creating today with Andy and other members of a team. And I don't want to have to share each item, so each brand kit, each library individually. I want them to be able to access the whole thing so that we can all create content, and we can even all schedule content. So if you look at my project here, you'll see we have the brand in the top left hand corner. We've also got some headshots which we're going to be using later. There's some headshots of me as the fictional founder of this company. I've also added a calendar, so Andy and I are both going to be able to schedule content to this joint calendar. And then we've got some folders. You'll see there's a template there and some other files, so everything is really like neatly organized, and I can share this whole project with Andy. Okay, so I'm going to start off by making a carousel post, and I want to cover that bond content that Andy talked about. So, as the fictional founder of our Paper Finch brand, I am going to create a carousel post introducing myself. Now, as I'm a designer, I actually started off this design in Adobe Illustrator, and if you use other Adobe tools, what's really nice is that you can really easily bring them into Adobe Express and convert them. So, I'm just going to start from my content and find my Illustrator file. And I'm going to convert it to an Adobe Express file because I want Andy to be able to work on this file as well within our project, where I'm going to save it at the end. So here you'll see the file. It's brought everything in, everything's editable, which is great. And as I mentioned, I've just created something very simple. So now I want to add some elements and make sure that the brand is properly applied within Adobe Express. So I'm going to start off by heading over to brands. And I'll find my Paper Finch brand that I just showed you. And I'm just going to grab the logo and make sure that that is front and center in my design, because that is a very important element. Next up, I want to include a photograph of me because this is meant to be, people getting to know who I am. So I'm going to head to your stuff and find the project that I showed you. And in there, you'll remember there was a folder of Liz headshots. So I'm just going to go in there and find one of the headshots that I think will work. Now, this is a, great simple headshot, but obviously it's got a background which isn't working with the design. So all I need to do is click on that image and use remove background. And within seconds, that background will be taken away. And then it's going to just fit in my design so much better than it did before. So I'll just adjust that. As I said, everything's editable, so I can move this up a touch so that it works better. And now I want to add some of those illustrations that were part of the brand. So again, I just head into the brand and scroll down and find those illustrations. I'll click on view all. I'll bring in, say, the laptop for this page, and I can just adjust as needed and change the location. Maybe I'll go for the globe on this one. And I can just keep adding elements to my design until I'm happy with it. I'm going to bring in the pencil for here. Let's add one more. I'm going to bring in this little book over here. So my carousel's coming together nicely, but I think as I'm going to post this on Instagram specifically, it would be really nice to add something to make it a bit more exciting. So I'm going to actually animate these illustrations. Now, if I head to this first page, all I need to do is click on animation. Now I want it to loop, so it doesn't need to come in or go out. And I'm going to select Bob for this one. And you'll see it just gives it a little bit of movement, which is really fun. And I can click on these toggles here and I can adjust the speed and intensity as needed. And I'm going to go through and adjust these ones as well. I think for this one, I'm going to go for spin because that works really nicely with the globe. And again, I can adjust things if I need to. We'll go for, I'm going to go for wiggle for this book. So you'll see that it's really easy to add movement to your designs. So now that I have created all of this carousel post, I want other people in my team to be able to use it as well so that they can make similar content. So how to get to know them. But I don't totally trust that they're not going to mess up my design. And so what I'm going to do is lock elements of it. So first up, I'm going to lock this logo. I want that to stay in the same place on every carousel post. I'm also going to lock this text, but I want them to be able to edit the text because obviously they're not the founder, so they need to insert what they do as part of the team. So I'm going to click lock, allow, text replace. And I'll do the same again for the name here. Allow text replace. And again, I can lock this image, but allow them to replace the image. So everything on that front page is going to stay in the same place, but they can update each aspect of it. And what's really nice with this is that that is going to really reinforce that consistency and build that trust that we've been talking about. So now that I've locked everything that I want to, I'm going to head to share. And I'm going to convert to template. So I'll click on that and this window comes up. So I'm just going to give it a new title. So get to know us. You'll see here that I can select the location. At the moment, it's in your stuff. But if I click select, go to projects and find my Paper Finch Press project, now this template will be stored in there. I can write them a little bit of a note here telling them how to use the carousel. I'm going to keep a copy of this file just so that I have the original for me on my account, and then I'm going to click convert to template. And so this will now be stored in the project. And as I mentioned, that project is shared with Andy. And so he will be able to access this and use this, and we can share it with other members of the team as well. And I can also copy a link to this template and share it with people, say in an email if I wanted to as well. So if we head back over to your stuff and we go to our project, you'll see that our template is now stored here in custom templates. So that is our Bond content that we've just created. So now I'm going to hand it over to Andy, and he is going to share the next bit of content that we're going to create.
All right then, thank you, Liz. This is looking great. So what we're going to do is start to create the next one in our pillar-based content strategy. So we created some Bond content, that's looking good. Now we want to create some educational content. Now, we already have some long form video for this. So this was a podcast that Liz did with another author, of which we want to chop up and help our audience understand what it takes to become an author and some education around it. Now, of course, this would take a long time to manually clip that and make it perfect for social to help us build our brand on social. But fortunately, we've got a tool for that. So let's go ahead and go explore the quick actions on Adobe Express. Quick actions are absolutely delightful because you'll find them directly here. Pressing the plus menu, you'll see a selection of quick actions. You'll find everything from removing background, generating a QR code, making a profile picture, which I absolutely love this one. And if you just search Clipmaker, you will then see it. So Clipmaker is perfect for talking head videos where you want to clip them into perfectly formatted 30 to 60-second clips. So we can just go ahead and drop a video that is appropriate. So this is that podcast chat. You can see its orientation. It's more in landscape orientation. We can actually now choose the aspect ratio as well. So I actually want these for a reel or story, but depending on your use case, you could go ahead and get that perfectly chopped and edited depending on the aspect ratio you want. I also want to add captions. So we're going to go ahead and generate those clips. So that uploads, that analyzes the transcript, that creates the captions, and then creates 10 perfectly formatted outputs. Generally takes about 5 to 10 minutes. So rather than waiting, I'm going to show you where this all is right now, because we've gone ahead, created those outputs, and they're already in our stuff. So in our project that we already have. So into Paper Finch Press, as you can see, everything that we're doing is in the project. This is our central place for all of our collaboration. So here we've created a folder, and this is what the output looks like. So these are all of the clips that have been automatically generated through Clipmaker. So what we have across these 10 perfectly formatted clips, we also have some page titles. You've already seen Liz working across multi-page designs. This is going to be incredibly useful for us, and we'll show this in the next activity that we'll create as well. These multiple pages allow us to see what each of these clips are about. So I think these tools will be a really useful one. These top business tools clip, I think it's going to be really useful. I think this is perfect for educational based content. So we can just click into that page so we can see all of the timeline here. We just press edit timeline. We've got all of the timeline tools as we'd expect. So we can move the playhead, we can right click, we can split, we can duplicate. We can continue to refine our edits if we want to. But in this case, I'm actually pretty happy with the clip. The overall duration, 18 seconds, nice and short. This will be great for sharing across short form social platforms. And what I'm going to do here is add a couple of scenes. So here, because the delightful thing is that we've got this in a project, which is where Liz and I are working. Everyone's got visibility and we can co-edit this live. So I want to add a front and end scene. I call them bumpers, to draw attention in the first place, to make sure it's going to capture attention whilst it shows up in an Instagram reel feed or YouTube shorts, etc. And I also want to add a call to action at the end. So I'm going to do this by adding scenes. So Liz will be able to work on this live with me, which is always delightful. So I'm going to add a blank scene here. And rather than creating something from scratch, because I think we've clearly established who the designer is here, and you can actually see Liz's mouse moving around already. So it's wonderful, this live co-editing. So again, I'm just going to go into our brands here. So in our brands, we've got the assets. You would have seen this from what Liz was creating. So this is perfect. So I quite like that pink one. So we're just going to bring that one in, and I'm going to pop that here. And I'm just going to set that as a background. That looks good. Now, each scene by default is about 5 seconds in length. I only want this to be 2 seconds. And I'm just going to simply add some text over the top of this. And again, when we're creating text, we can make sure that we're using the correct brand as well. So here, just put the Papers Finch Press brand here. We'll use that font. And we're going to say new episode out now. New episode drops today. Listen now. Right, as you can probably see, I am no copywriter. So what I'm going to do is use the rewrite function here, and I'm going to rephrase to make it sound more inspirational. There we go. And we get given 3 different alternatives for the rewrite. Okay. A fresh episode arrived. Listen now. We'll take that one actually. That looks pretty good. So we can do that, and I'm just going to center align the text, make that a little bit bigger. I'm sure Liz will probably go in and edit a few parts of my design, no doubt. And what we're also going to do is add a bit of animation to this as well. So Liz showed a whole bunch of animation tools as well, but you can also animate text. So I quite like the typewriter effect here, make that a touch shorter as well in duration, so it's a bit quicker. Cool, and that looks good. Let's just move the playhead and see what Liz has done. Cool, that's looking nice. And now what we're simply going to do is add some transitions between the scenes. I like a dissolve here, and I'll do the same in the ending scene here. Again, add a transition, dissolve that one. Now we can also add some audio here if we want to. So in this instance, I might add a bit of kind of lo-fi here, because it's quite nice bit of background music here. So we can search some effects. We've also got a whole bunch of sound effects too. And also you can bring in trending sounds from TikTok too. So you've got a whole bunch of ideas and scenarios that you can put in here. But what we're going to do is use this lo-fi hip hop loop, pop that one in. And I want to just change the volume here, fade in, fade out. And there we go. We've got something that looks pretty good. Now, a couple other things I'm just going to do real quick is go to brands. And because the captions aren't in our brand font, I'm just going to make sure before I toggle brand, I'm just going to apply our fonts here, apply the brand. So there we go. So now the captions are now in our brand font as well, which is delightful. And the final thing I'm going to do to make sure it's all on brand is I'm going to add a little kind of logo lockup just here, pop that in the bottom right. And here, I'm going to just make that a touch smaller because we need the brand identity happening all throughout this episode, or this clip rather. We're just going to go to animation, and I am going to just fade that one in, I think. So fade that one in. Wonderful. All right, so we've got something that's looking pretty good. Of course, this is just one of the 10 clips that we've created. So if we go back to all the pages, we could continue working through those other pages, refining them, etc. There's like 10 weeks of social content here just in this one clip maker project. But in the case of this one, what I'm going to do, this is ready to be shared. Liz's edits look really good. Now we're ready to share it to social. So we just hit the share button, we share to social. Now we've got a choice between our shared calendar or our personal calendar. As you can see, you can have multiple shared calendars. I find this absolutely delightful. Of course, everything that Liz and I are working on together is all in our shared calendar. Perfect way to work with an extended team. So we're just going to choose both LinkedIn and Instagram on this one. And we're just going to make sure that this is a reel. And now we can add a caption. I'm no caption writer. And I'm just going to write in the top tools for authors, And then I will use a generate caption to generate us a new caption on this one. This is trained on social data, so it will orientate the caption based on hook and caption length, depending on the platform that's selected. This looks pretty good. We'll go with that. I might dial down some of the hashtags and some of the emojis, but of course we can continue editing it as we please. Sometimes it just gives you a really good start. I'm just going to set as draft because we don't want this actually publishing today. Pop that out for next week. And then I'm just going to add that to the calendar. I could continue working on through the rest of those outputs as well, all those different pages. A wonderful way of both speeding up the creation of content, the editing, and the publishing. All right, so we've already created now something related to bond-orientated content. We've created our educate-orientated content, and we've created that clipmaker project at scale and created 10 different versions from that longer video. Now we want to create something that represents our showcase pillar. Now to do that, we already have a template that we're going to use. So now we'll show you what it's like to use a template and an example of what Liz made earlier and what it will look like for a marketer like me to be able to consume that template and then use it. So what we do is go to the Adobe Express homepage, go back to your stuff and into projects. As we've been seeing throughout the course of this, projects is a central point for everything that we'll be doing together. Honestly, I can't express how useful it is. So here, back to projects. And then we can see the custom templates, the one that Liz made earlier, and this testimonial post that Liz has already created for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a template. It's given me some ideas of the template restrictions of what I can and can't do. So I press use template. Now, the delightful thing about this for someone that doesn't have the design capabilities of my friend Liz is that it gives me a paint by numbers approach to how I can use this template. So think about how you might use something like this within your business and how you might want to extend design and creativity across your organization. So here, I know exactly what text I can change. I know the things I can't change. And it's given me a real nice quick replace flow, hidden all the rest of the editor components because, you know, as someone that doesn't need to create any design here, just giving me a paint by numbers, step-by-step approach for what I can do. But actually, you know, I don't want to just create one version of this. I want to create a bunch of testimonials. So that way I'm going to go ahead and use bulk create. So bulk create is driven from an Excel file upload. I've created an Excel already, and essentially it's really easy. Create an Excel with any of the columns of the data that you want to include in your spreadsheet. So in this instance, we want to have a headline, we want to have a testimonial, and we want to change out the name. So I just browse something that I've created already, upload it, press next, and it's smart enough to read that spreadsheet and then look at the components that we have in the columns of the spreadsheet and map it to the design. If it doesn't do that for you, you can just click any element of the design and choose to map it to the associated column that you want to associate it to from your Excel file. But otherwise, this looks all good to me. And then I go ahead and press next. So when I press next, as you can see, it's created a whole bunch of different versions for me. So now we can see that all of the text has been changed. The headshot is still the same. So this is where we just need to press add multiple assets. So Liz has already created the library for us. So here, just in our libraries that Liz has, here's our testimonial headshots. And yeah, just simply, we're going to go find the associated headshots and we just drag and drop, bring them in, nice and easy. And think how you might do something like this or use this approach when you're creating a bunch of like different product shots. Maybe you're creating variations for some ads. Maybe you're a restaurant creating different menu items. Anything where you want the same design language and the same format of the post, but you just want to swap out the components of it. So with that, now we've got all of our different versions of it. We can create those pages. Now we could take repurposing even further if we wanted to. So we could take any one of these and we could go ahead and mix it up if we wanted to. So we can just go back to our brands at any point within this and we could swap this out if we needed to. And we could change the colors, etc., relative to our brand kit. And we can also do other cool things like resize. So whilst this is perfect for Instagram portrait posts, this could be easily resized to turn this into something that would fit a Instagram story, for example. So we can maximize the utility of this, not because we just created multiple versions, then we can create multiple different takes on that. So here I'm just going to duplicate and resize that page to suit an Insta story, as you can see here. And then we can even apply like one-click animations to this too. So now we've created a standout mixed media story here. And you can see how quickly we've just turned one single template into 10 different versions of it, of which we've remixed through bulk create. And then we've taken that further to repurpose that to different asset types as well, to really extend our utility, of which we can then again share it on social, do all of those things that we were sharing earlier, which gets us back to that kind of wonderful endpoint. So when we get back to our project here, go back into Paperfinch Press, we've now got the assets that we've just created, our shared templates, and then we've also got our shared calendar, which is now starting to get populated with all of the content that we were creating across multiple different channels and formats. And with that, we have just scaled our social content strategy. We've built the foundations through blocks and the bond framework. We've created 3 different types of content based around those pillars of bond, educate, and showcase, and scaled that using tools like Clipmaker and bulk create, but kept that all consistently on brand through the use of brands and projects. So anything else you'd like to add before we close out today, Liz?
No, that's great. I've had a great time, Andy. Thank you for sharing all of the amazing tools in Adobe Express. And I really hope you've enjoyed our session and that you find it really useful.
Thank you. See you soon.